Welcome to the Impact Room, brought to you by Douglas Jackson, who help you hire more impactful, diverse leaders who stay for longer and are more successful. The Impact Room is a business, CX, and leadership podcast where exceptional, diverse, and impactful leadership and wisdom is shared. We dive deep into pressing topics that impact your customer-led business, featuring interviews with CEOs, COOs, Chief Customer, Chief People Officers, directors, influential leaders, and subject matter experts who share their lived experiences, top tips, thoughts, advice, and industry trends to help elevate existing and future talent. So let's dive into our next episode, and please don't forget to like, subscribe, or share if you enjoy this content. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Impact Room. I'm Holly Beeston, the Utilities Practice Lead here at Douglas Jackson, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Hannah Harrison. Welcome, Hannah.
Thanks, Holly.
So Hannah's a high performer in every aspect of her life. She's a doting mum, an Olympic and international sports official, professionally umpiring for hockey, a trustee for the Hockey Umpiring Trust, and also a corporate leader in the utilities sector as Director of Operations at the Energy Ombudsman. So how did you get here, Hannah? It'd be great to understand a little bit more about what led you to this and the Paris 2024 Olympics as well.
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me, Holly. It is lovely to come and talk to you about these things today. It's really interesting, isn't it, some of the life choices we make. And I found early doors that I love sports. I love everything about it in terms of the wellness it gives you, both mentally and physically, the camaraderie with teammates, and just some of the life skills about being able to talk to anybody and everybody and having to make a connection. I've played hockey since I was about 7. And it's definitely shaped who I am today and all manners of my life. I met my husband through hockey, and we always describe our third family is our hockey family, and it really is. And I think early doors it just helped me understand a little bit about who I was and what I wanted to be. I enjoyed the challenge of just trying to be better at sports. And around about the age of 16, I loved playing hockey, and my mum was my PE teacher. And I used to go back and help her in the evenings with her younger age groups. And I did a bit of coaching. And eventually I picked up a whistle and started refereeing a few of the games in the evening. And a couple of years later, around about turn of millennium, the UK sport body, as it was then, said, come on, let's have a really great celebration of sport to mark millennium. And the hockey governing body said, well, that's super, but we would like young people to be umpired by young people. And young umpires wasn't really a thing back then, but it started. And from then on, the movement and the pathway for young people to get into officiating in hockey was really the first in the world to be started in England. And I just happened to be there at the right time in the right place. And as people offered opportunities, I kind of went, yeah, I'd love to try it, grabbed it and went with it. And a few years later, again, Europe didn't have women, they didn't have young women. In my early 20s, probably the next youngest was somebody up in their 40s. So I got opportunities to go and do different hockey events around the country and eventually around Europe and then around the world. So in my 20s, I was dead lucky. I got to go and travel to different countries that I never would have traveled on my own. I was working by then and just kind of followed the pathway that was in front of me and climbed my way through the ranks. And lo and behold, a few years later, started to hit some of the hot top level tournaments that were the dreams that I'd always wanted to do, like the Commonwealth Games and the World Cups, and then through to Paris this summer. So definitely getting to Paris was a lifelong dream broken down to much smaller goals over a couple of decades worth of effort. So yeah, it's been a journey, but that's been the best bit. It's the journey and the process that makes you who you are, gives you the richness in life, and the connection to many people that you meet along the way and who support you, because without them you can't do it on your own. It's just not possible, especially being a working full-time mum as well.
How on earth do you balance it?
I think balance is the key. It's interesting. I was reading a book only at the weekend, and it talked about being a contented working mum. And I chuck in hockey with that as well. So I've always kind of said there's 3 parts to kind of who I am and what I do. And the three parts don't ever exist in perfect balance or in equilibrium. They have to ebb and flow. And it's a bit like a juggling act, isn't it? We all know being, having a job that you want to do well in for your own personal achievement, but being a mum so that you're present and you're there for your children and you're bringing them up with love and kindness um, is not always an easy task. So, like all things, occasionally I drop a ball and I can't juggle everything because I'm only human. So at the moment I'm full-time mum, full-time career, and hockey takes a bit of a backseat for a few months. And during Paris, I found out 9 months before going to Paris that I got the gig, as it were. And my husband and family were great. They went, do you know what? Go for your runs in the evening if you miss the odd family dinner. And work was super and said, you know what? Do hybrid, come in at these times, fit your training in around work. And therefore hockey took priority and work and family took a little bit of a back seat. So yeah, they all ebb and flow, they all take their turn. And it's just trying to do it in the best balanced way that I can do for everybody, but for myself as well.
And I think that's the thing, isn't it? I think we all think that we have to be super and 100% with every part of our lives, but ultimately it's just not feasible full time, is it?
Possible. It's not possible. I don't know about you, but I think certainly growing up, kind of the generation we are, people kind of like saying you can have it all, and as a woman you can be a working mum and you can do everything full time, you can do this and that. And I was like, I don't think you can. I haven't met Superwoman yet. I don't think
Nor
she
me.
exists. And if she does, she has a hell of a lot of help. Because I don't think you can do much of this on your own. And you have to have your support or your teams around you. And certainly for me, my family and the community who live near me, extended family, friends, they all pitch in. When I was away in the Olympics, I was there for 3 weeks in Paris. And I just put out a note to a usual group of suspects and went, I'm away for 3 weeks. Anybody wants to have the family for dinner? Or to give a human connection to my husband so he's got some adult company, or could offer to help with such and such. And they all lean in. And sometimes you just have to be brave enough and have the humility to ask for help, to go, I can't do it all. Who can help me this time? And I'll return the favor when you need it. And I think that's the beauty about kind of the communities and the support you have around you. You need them to get through life. Somebody once told me when I was pregnant with my daughter, they said it takes a community or a village to raise a child, and they're not wrong. They're not wrong. And it's the same, I think, in work, in sports, and in life with family. I've got my communities around me for each three things, and they all lean in when I need a bit of help. It's fantastic, really.
And I think that's one of the things, as I have a young son myself, and I think one of the things that I've always personally felt is I can do it all and I don't need to ask for help. And actually, since I've stopped stopping myself from asking for help, life's got a whole lot easier.
Yeah, and do you know what? That I think that lesson I probably bad it as humility, isn't it, to a degree? I think I learned that a long time ago in hockey, particularly, more so than anywhere else in my life.
Okay.
So I remember an incident when I was umpiring a game, and I do men's hockey as well as women's. Sometimes I'm the only female in that kind of environment, and this really big, kind of 6'5" goalkeeper comes running up to me, all his kit and everything, absolutely full power. Went, Hannah, that was wrong. What are you doing? It's the wrong decision. I was like, yeah, I know. Oh, I know I got it wrong. I'm gonna turn it the other way, and we're actually gonna go that way now. And he was like, oh, okay then. And you know what? We became best friends almost in that game because he had that trust for me that I would admit when I was wrong. And I was only talking to somebody the other week who quoted back to me a similar incident at another game, and he said to me, "I have so much respect for you because you admitted when you were wrong, or you admitted when you needed help, because that just shows the honesty around who you are as an individual." I think the same applies in at work and at home life. Sometimes we have to go, can't do it all. Can somebody just help, please? And I definitely take that into my work situation because there's so many things you don't know as a leader. There's so many things you don't know about part of the business or the process or what tools and technology we might or might not be using. And you kind of have to hold your hands up with a bit of humility and go, I don't know the answer to that, but we're a team. Somebody in here can help. Who knows the answer or who can go and find the answer. And that's the beauty of teams, isn't it? Whether you're high performing or you're on that journey together to be high performing, you're only as good as the sum of the parts.
Yeah,
And together you make something better and more beautiful. But you can't do it on your own. You can't be everything or know everything. And if you try to be, then I think you just set yourselves up for failure, don't you, really?
absolutely. And I think it's really interesting because when we first met, we talked about the synergies between your career, sort of family life, and how that progressed as well. So your corporate career as well as your sporting career. And you talked about there being a lot of synergies along the way, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. They've definitely gone hand in hand. I think so. I started life in financial services and then moved across to utilities.
Mm.
And pretty much every promotion or serious change in job with more responsibility, I can kind of map within 6 months of also getting promoted within a hockey context and moving up the ladder, as it were, of international umpiring. And they
Uh,
really have gone hand in hand. And sometimes work's led first, and then the hockey's followed. And for a little while, it flipped round, and now it's gone back the other way. But I think I do largely put that down to kind of the skills that are transferable. I almost have double the opportunity to practice my skills because I'm practicing them at work and I'm practicing them in hockey. And because the environments are slightly different, they give me a much greater richness to practice them in. But equally, they all go into one big melting pot, don't they? And they're all just you as an individual. So I think that massively has helped, just being able to practice those skills more. But I think it also goes down to confidence because sometimes in life, and particularly I think as a woman in a working world and utilities, we're often sometimes the only female in a room in a meeting,
yeah,
and you've got to generate self-belief from somewhere. Some people call it confidence, some people call it self-belief, but I think having that sporting opportunity as well as work opportunity, I've been able to fill my self-belief bucket a little bit quicker and a bit
yeah.
faster than perhaps if I only had kind of that one aspect to fill it from. And I think that's really healthy. Because I think sometimes we do need a good dose of self-belief to kind of be able to step into that room, lead the conversation, or try to influence somebody with a particular business case that you've got, or in my case, step out onto a pitch and with 2,000 people shouting and screaming and cheering the teams on. You need it for all walks of life, don't you?
You absolutely do. And I think it's really interesting because I think when you talk about making decisions, whether that be in a corporate capacity or making a decision in a hockey game, you've got to you've got to back yourself, haven't you, in all of those scenarios, and you've got to be confident in what you're doing. And like you say, sometimes you do get it wrong, but
Yeah.
that's life, right?
Oh, so some of my best failures have given me the most learning ever. And I can remember a lot of them vividly. And at the time, they felt awkward and uncomfortable. But they always say growth comes from a place of uncomfortableness,
Mm,
essentially. And that is true. And I think you have to kind of fail to learn. And I remember growing up, I didn't do failure very well as a teenager. I wasn't used to failing. It wasn't something I felt comfortable doing, so I avoided it. Whereas I think throughout my life, I've really tried to learn to embrace it because you learn your best lessons from something that goes wrong. I'm a rubbish cook. I will endeavour to get better at cooking, but I'm never going to be that good. So I just embrace the failure now and go, do you know what? The cake kind of looks like a cake, but it's just about edible. But no, I'm never going to be on a Great British Bake Off or anything like that. I think know your strengths. Cooking's not one of mine. But I think you're right as well. I think the skills when it comes to like decision making, both in that kind of sporting and work context, a lot of them are very similar. If we think about, high performance is often in a pressurized situation. How do you respond to pressure? How do you even perceive it? Let alone then having the calmness, the communication skills, and kind of that emotional intelligence to move people to where you need or want them to be.
mm,
There's tools and techniques you can use kind of in work, and I use in hockey and umpiring. Because essentially, an umpiring perspective, I'm just managing people. It's building relationships. I make a few decisions along the way, but it's about the rapport, the connection, and how you work with people to just get a great game of hockey. And I think there's a lot you can like kind of like learn when you watch sports, and particularly like football refs, how to
mm.
do it, how not to do it. And the same can be applied in work when you observe others in meetings. You think, gosh, that person's really effective. what is it about them that makes them so effective? And you just kind of do that little bit of people watching for a few minutes and you see things that you like and that resonate with you. And you can add all of those into your own bucket to then take away and do something great with them yourself.
Oh, absolutely. And I think one of the things that resonated with me from the first time that we spoke was I suppose I didn't appreciate, and this is off, I think you can look at this from both sides, but I didn't appreciate the level of training that would go into umpiring in hockey because you just, maybe assumptively on my part, didn't think about the fact that you needed to be as fit as the athletes competing because you've got to keep up. And I think it's the same within a corporate professional capacity as well, isn't it? You've got to be on it and you've got to lead it. You've got to be on a par, if not better, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, we describe it as like match fitness, and I think you're
Mm.
right. Same applies both kind of on a sports pitch and work. And if I look at it from a kind of a sporting perspective, the world of hockey certainly is not the same as rugby and football. The athletes, the players, they've only been professional for, a handful of years. And us as officials, we're not professional, we're amateurs. We do the best with the tools and skills we've got and the time available, but we're not funded. All of our training comes out of our own pocket and our own time. Rugby and football, they're professional athletes. They turn up every day at a centre somewhere in England. They train, they have psychologists, they have strength and conditioning coaches, they have all the facilities they want. So for me, I've always done my very best within my own ability. But when it got to the Olympics, I knew that 9 months had to be the very best I ever
Mm.
had to offer. And for 9 months, I trained as a professional while still having a full-time job. And there were 5 days a week I'd be out there either doing sprints, strength and conditioning exercises, runs, footwork. Some days I'd do it twice a day as well, depending on the peak of the training cycle. I absolutely loved it. I really did love the whole process, seeing my PBs improve massively. If you'd asked me to write them down on a
Mm.
piece of paper before I started the journey, I could only have dreamt of those numbers, but it wasn't sustainable. It isn't sustainable now that I'm back. I've had to drop it all back down to the levels that work for me and my family.
Yeah.
And to be honest, the nice bit about it has been the mental relief. Knowing that you had to fit 5 sessions into your working week and you're thinking, right, we need to be on the office on Tuesday. I won't get home till this time. I've got to get the daughter to swimming or gymnastics. Where can I fit in the run? And I'd get to kind of the end of the week and go, I've only done 4 out of 5 sessions. You'd have a little bit of guilt with that. Whereas now the guilt's gone. I'm like, haven't made the gym this morning. Oh well, never mind. And I'm still training hard, but nowhere near to the same levels. And it has been a welcome change, I must admit. It's not sustainable being professional in that regard, as well as being a
Mm.
professional working mum. But I think the same is true in work. You need to match fit. So I was talking to somebody only recently about leadership, and I am a team leader. No matter what
Mm.
job title you have in an organization, you are a leader of people. And that's an infinite journey. That's never done. And anyone who thinks that they're done as a leader and they've got nothing new to learn, you're not going to be very good at some point, and everyone's
They're
going to
wrong,
overtake
aren't
you.
they?
And they are wrong. Let's just say it. They are wrong. So I love learning. So I absolutely adore learning. So I see the roles that we have at work as always something to learn from. Whether it's a briefing that you've given to your team, whether it's the way you've made a decision collectively as a group, or you've managed your budgets, or you've done your recruitment. There's things you can always identify for improvement. You can continuously improve as an individual and as a team, and that keeps you match fit. That keeps you
Mm.
at pace with the modern way of working smarter, not harder, and being able to balance everything at the end of your day and go home. Oh, do you know what? I've added value today. Today's been a good day, and it can be this much or it can be a massive amount. That for me, as long as I've added a little bit of value to my team and the way we work and what we're doing, and ultimately how we're servicing people who come to us, then that's a good day in the office, isn't it?
Definitely. And obviously, you've touched on the challenge of sort of fitting it all in, but are there any sort of particular techniques that you used or approaches to stay both sort of physically and mentally prepared for the demands of umpiring in a competition like the Olympics. You're on a world stage there, aren't you?
You are, yeah. And do you know what? There's always the physical aspect that everyone always thinks about, but you're absolutely right. The kind of mental preparation is just as important. So there are things that we absolutely do within hockey to kind of get ourselves ready for that. But I think there's also a lot you can just do on your own, which fits into day-to-day life. So I'm a big fan of kind of being present in the situation. And I think mindfulness and practicing that is really powerful. So just as an example, when you walk out on a hockey pitch and any international sporting event, you usually have the referees walking out with the teams, you have some anthems, you stand there for quite a while.
Mm.
You can be cold or boiling hot, and in Paris it was absolutely baking and we melted. But you've got the crowd singing their anthems, everybody's energy is high, the pride is high. It can be quite overwhelming as a situation. And for me, that's the moment where I practice my mindfulness. So if you think
Okay.
about just silly things like belly breathing, just being really, really calm with your breathing, using that to just ground yourself in the moment so that kind of the anthems wash over you and the noise wash over you, and you get to appreciate it and go, this is pretty awesome, standing here in the middle of Paris Olympic Games. But equally, you're calm and you're centered and you're ready to do the job that you're
Mm.
about to start. And again, I think the same in work. I always use the same technique if I'm going to stand up and do a presentation in front of people to get my calmness, to get the breath right, the pace of delivery correct, so that the emotion of the occasion doesn't become an overriding factor and you can still
Mm.
remain really calm in the situation and just deliver it in the best possible way. And that's really important, I think, particularly when you're doing, great positive messages of success or reward and recognition, but equally when you've got to do some quite tough messages, you need to be that calm in the storm because somebody might have an emotional reaction to something you're about to say. And that's definitely a technique that I take between both worlds.
And it's hard, isn't it? Because we're only human. The emotion does take over when whether you're making big decisions or whether it's something that's going to impact either yourself or somebody that you're sort of leading in your team in either capacity. It's really important to sort of be able to manage that emotion. Definitely going to take that breathing into
Yeah,
consideration.
I wish I was as good at doing it with my children. That's still a work in progress. When you've got that red mist moment where you just want to absolutely blow your top at something that they've done or not done. And trying to take that into being a mother, I think is definitely the one I'm still working on, to have that calmness and, measured response to something. It's much harder doing that one as a parent, I think, than anything in life.
Two
Parenting is
out
the
of three
toughest
isn't
job.
bad.
It's not, is it? I'll take it. Yeah.
So if you were to talk to somebody else that was in a similar position to you, where their passion was in the sporting world or something similar, and they were also looking to accelerate their own professional career as well alongside, what advice would you give to somebody in that situation?
So I do mentor a lot of people actually, both in kind of hockey officiating, the young umpires who are coming from through the system, as well as quite a lot of young women at work who are on a similar journey but on a career path. And I say the same thing to all of them actually. Do what you love,
Mm.
find your joy in life, and do wherever that takes you, do what you love. Because it'll make you a better person for it. It'll make you a richer person for it in terms of life experience and just love of what you do and satisfaction, but equally it makes you a better parent as well. And I think particularly for, working women in particular with children, the science shows that those kids who have a working parent, particularly working mothers, have a really strong role model in life to follow. And
Mm.
I kind of look at most of the things I do in life and go, if I could just make a little bit of a difference here, if I can just nudge the dial slightly, when my daughters come through into a career path or into sport, it'll be a little bit easier for them
Yeah.
and a little bit more straightforward, or the path will be better lit, or there'll be more opportunities in roles that perhaps you or I don't necessarily have the door fully open for us today, and we've had to really go and push it
Mm.
open. And ultimately, that's what I do. I do what I love, but it's always with a little angel on my shoulder going, and will this help make it easier for your daughters? And I
Yeah.
really hope the answer is yes, because I think that's really important to me to make sure that they have some of those wonderful opportunities that I've had and more. And I look at my own mum. She was a working mum. She's a teacher. Fantastic role model to go out there and see you kind of can have a family and you can have a career. Yes, there's balance and it's never perfection. But I look at the doors that she had opened to her when she came through life, and she probably had 2 university opportunities. You could be a secretary or you're a teacher. And now I look at all the
Yeah,
opportunities I had, so much more. So again, I just hope the same for my daughters as well. But yeah,
definitely.
do what you love, definitely.
I love that. And I think even from my perspective, I do a lot in the sort of diversity space. I'm really passionate about women in leadership. And I don't have a daughter myself. I've got a little boy, but I think from my perspective, I want him to look and be proud of the things that I've achieved in my career. And I also want him to be an ally and an advocate for the women around him in work. So that's I suppose where it can come from a
Yeah,
different tact. I've got
absolutely.
3 nieces as well, who I hope will be absolute powerhouses in their futures. But it's important, isn't it? It's not just about sort of leading the way, but also leading by example and showing that it's achievable.
Yeah, definitely. I think the allyship is really important because I think that there are so many men who I look around, both in my hockey world and in my working world, who have been absolute allies every step of the way. And particularly in hockey, because normally speaking, there's about a third of women compared to 2/3 of men in most of our associations and sport clubs and things. Um, and I have like my hockey husbands. So they're the guys who I'll ring up on a Saturday night and go, I had a horrible game, or I made this decision. Do you think that's right? And you need that support group, like we said earlier. And in the working world, I have probably more women that I can draw on. But in the
Yeah,
hockey world, it's more men who are my allies and my champions. And as I mentioned
interesting.
earlier, I met my husband through hockey, and having him as one of my champions, one of my allies, and loudest, proudest cheerleader, unforgivingly so. It makes a massive difference, doesn't it? And you do need those people, you do need those allies. And I think the men have an awful lot to offer. And we were just having a discussion at work the other day around how many women in a room you need to be able to change the conversation for the better. And sometimes you haven't even got one in the room. So first of all, invite a
Mm,
female into the room, because the female increases the group intelligence that grows by having a female voice in the room. Because men struggle to do it on their own, but by adding a female in, you push that forward. You add three in, and it changes the dynamic even more so. And it's almost like 3 women in a room is almost beginning to be a magic number, because just the type of conversation you have, the debate, the idea growth that you have, it seems to stimulate something. So yeah, I always say to everyone at work, if you haven't got a female in the room, make sure you do, because it changes the dynamic of the conversation. But even better, have 3 in the room.
that's really interesting, particularly when you look at, particularly in the energy industry, actually, with the powerful women 40 by 40. The percentage of women getting onto boards, there's a hell of a lot of focus on that, but that's just the proof's in the pudding there, isn't it?
It is definitely, and there's still so much more I think we can do as an industry, particularly in female leadership in kind of your P&L side,
Mm,
as CFOs. Half of the people who qualify as accountants in this country are women, but something like less than 15% are CFOs in the FTSE. And you kind of go, where's it not quite working? And women are
where's the tail
great.
off?
Women are great in negotiation. They're great at commercial acumen. We bring a lot of those skills that are our fortes to that world of business. And yeah, there's definitely more that can be done in that space. And we can definitely champion the strengths of women to be in the right roles to make the difference in the corporate world.
Absolutely. And I don't know about you, but I've had a lot of experience practicing my negotiation skills with a toddler, so they're
Yes,
ruthless.
I can relate to that. They are good.
So, what's next for you? What are your future goals, Hannah, both in your umpiring career and your professional life?
Probably what I said earlier, actually. I just want to continue doing what I love, for
Yeah.
as long as I can, in terms of being able to balance 3 things that I adore. My family. I get a lot of satisfaction and growth from my working world. and I get a lot of satisfaction and growth from the hockey life. So I'll continue to do them all for as long as I possibly can because they give me so much. And hopefully I give back to also where I'm from and the pathways that I followed for the next girls and guys who follow me through that pathway in both work and hockey. So yeah, I tend to believe in squiggly careers. I'm afraid your path takes you where it needs to take you at the right time. You've just got to keep your eyes open for it and be willing to embrace opportunities when they come and just give it a go because what's the worst that can happen? You fail and you learn something along the way. I think that's pretty good personally. So yeah, more of that really.
Definitely. And I think touching on what you were sort of saying earlier, it's not being afraid to make those decisions and make a mistake, because you always can own up to it and recover it anyway, can't you? So
Yeah,
everything can be put
definitely.
right.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you can view them with a positive mindset as well. Failure is often so often described in a negative way, but if you look at it through a growth mindset and it's an opportunity to continuously learn and grow, then you're actually winning. This might not feel like it at the time, but when you look back with a little bit of hindsight, a little bit of distance, you do see the positives from those opportunities. But that's the positive mindset that sometimes we have to approach the things with after the event.
And I'm sure I speak for those listening and watching now, but it is truly inspiring how you have managed to balance it all with the help of your village too. But I think it's really insightful to see, and I think there'll be many people, myself included, that are sitting here thinking, I've only got two of the three things that you're juggling at the moment, and seem to still be dropping the odd plate here and there. But no, it's been great to understand a little bit more about your journey and some of the exciting things that you've been involved in, and some of the lessons and the challenges that you faced along the way as well. So thanks so much for sharing your story to date with us today.
Thank you so much, Holly. It's been lovely to talk to you.
Likewise, cheers, Hannah.